Please help me welcome Mr. Steve Stucker.
Thank you very much. My wife Rose got to come down with me. We had a great time last night, got to meet a lot of folks, and we're very happy to be here in Carlsbad, and I'm truly honored to be your speaker. They said they wanted to help everybody take a nap after lunch, so they invited me out, and here I am. I have to say, though, I was tricked into being here, and Tony and Johnny can vouch for this. They tell me that Mayor Janway watches the morning show religiously, and he knows I'm a very patriotic guy. So he reached out and asked if I believed in free speech. I said, absolutely. He said, great, you're giving one in Carlsbad at the Energy Summit here. Just kidding, of course. But as I researched what this event was all about and looked at who would be attending, I felt like I should be paying you for the honor of sharing my heart today. And I'm very excited about sharing what's on my mind these days concerning this crazy world that we live in. So I started to write a speech, and then I said, no, I'm going to do this just like my forecast and make it up as I go along. Oil fields are in my DNA, but I really didn't know that until recently. My great-grandfather, Etheridge Malcolm Coffey, worked for a wildcatter as a roughneck when he was young. And he actually named my grandmother, her middle name is Fordyce, after the Fordyce Oil Company that he was associated with. I absolutely love the idea of this summit with the city leaders, industry experts, oil and gas icons, and everyday people like us from the community, along with the workforce, all coming together to hear about and talk about what's going on, what's coming around the corner, because it deeply affects us all. And the first point I want to make is that I'm here as a citizen of the United States of America. I'm very happy to be employed by the TV station I've been at for 33 years, but I'm not here representing them. I took 2 days of personal vacation so Rose and I could come see the caverns and get to know the wonderful people of Carlsbad. I'm not running for office, though I hear there is another forecaster who is. I thought about it and told Mark, I can't afford the pay cut, but thank you, I appreciate it. Because of my situation in the media, I do my best to steer clear of publicly discussing politics. I definitely have strong opinions on very important issues that we all deal with these days, and I strongly support all of you being involved politically in every way possible. I believe it's more important than ever before these days, especially for your industry. Yet my message today is not designed to be political in any way. As different as each and every one of us are, we have much more in common than we might imagine. Politics used to be about two different sides of opinion meeting in the middle to agree on a set of compromises that gives everyone the confidence to move forward in some way on important issues. The formation of the United States of America, which I believe to be the greatest nation in the history of the world, would never have happened without a lot of strong-minded people being willing to come to a middle ground and compromise. They each had to give in to a large degree, in many cases, on some deeply held beliefs and opinions, or the USA would have never happened. Our nation has made big mistakes, a lot of them right from the get-go. But we keep trying to get better. And we've been the beacon of freedom and opportunity to the rest of the world for over 200 years. You know, for many years I was able to avoid the political side of the news by saying, I'm just the weather guy. And now there are so many people who are intent on politicizing even the forecast. They make it clear that they want us to talk about other kinds of things that I will not talk about on the air. And I want to make it clear, I'm not a meteorologist. I'm what I lovingly describe as a mediocritist. Yes, mediocre, maybe just an average guy, but I'm very determined to be really good at just being average, and there's nothing wrong with just being normal, just one of the folks. My point is I'm not a scientist, I'm a translator, and I believe I'm a good one. I work by putting together my forecast with a team of brilliant scientists employed by the National Weather Service, and I take their morning issue of 2 to 3 pages of scientific gobbledygook, prognostications, and translate them into semi-understandable English so that you can have an idea of what to expect in the weather for the next several days with a decent degree of accuracy. But I have people call me on a regular basis, text or email, how come you're not talking about climate change or global warming? I got a long, impassioned email about it yesterday, and I tell them because that's not what Mrs. Gonzalez needs to know in order to dress her 3 kids for school in the morning or the soccer match afterwards. It's not what Rancher Henderson needs to know about whether or not he should cut his alfalfa that day. But I do consider myself smart enough to stay well-read on the subject, and you've heard some brilliant presentations today. And I see that there are many different opinions on what, if anything, is happening and why. And it bothers me that we tend to only hear from one group of scientific thought when there are several other differing opinions by highly esteemed experts that get suppressed or at least rarely mentioned in the public forums. And many of these intelligent scientists are degraded and called names simply for having a different scientific outlook and explanation. And to me, true science is always looking at all the information available and constantly trying to come up with new and better ways of understanding what we're learning. And when we push aside a large group of very intelligent scientists and ignore, or worse, badmouth their work just because they have a differing opinion, that makes me suspicious. And a true scientist is not afraid to study every source available, even if, especially when, it may contradict their work or opinion. That's how we learn. We used to think the world was flat. As an outside observer, I would expect that most of you in the oil and gas industry deal with a large variety of negative feelings and emotions these days. Just a wild guess. I'm sure you must feel dismayed that an industry that provides such a huge percentage of our state budget, literally billions of dollars each year, is being so critically scrutinized and criticized. And I would guess that you're often disappointed that your contributions, both physical and financial, to the well-being of our world are not recognized or celebrated as most of us in this room today believe they should be. And being human, I wouldn't be surprised at all if any of you feel downright depressed about the predictions for your industry in the near future and the state of our world in general, though we heard a lot of positive information here today and last night. I know from personal experience how easy it is to get caught up in all the negatives when you're constantly surrounded by them. Believe me, I walk into the newsroom every morning and go, whoa, what did I sign up for? There's so much to be concerned about in our society today that it's a real challenge to find the positives in our daily lives, let alone to be able to focus on them. Just about any newscast or glimpse at the internet will show you stories of death and destruction, robbery, murder, accidents, and natural disasters, plus the economy and threats of world war. No wonder you can't wait to wake up in the morning and turn on that TV with my ugly mug there. Add that to the fact that your industry is under the magnifying glass, targeted for closure by many in our society, and I sure can't blame you. So the title of my presentation today is Positive Energy in a Negative World. Energy, as you know, is power. It can propel a car, a truck, a boat, an enormous airliner, a warship, or a rocket to the moon. And whether it's oil and gas, water, wind, hydrogen, solar, nuclear, without power, nothing moves, not much happens. Our world comes to a standstill. And I want each of you to recognize that you possess and control a source of positive energy that is much older and much more powerful than any of the sources I just mentioned. And that source is your mind. There were 2 young geniuses last night that spoke, young guys that know so much about what's happening and how we're going to be able to blend the new with what you've done for decades. And it was so encouraging to hear them, to hear their positive attitude, their contemporary knowledge, brilliant minds. And my goal today, I do not have a brilliant mind. Like I said, I'm a simple guy. But my goal is to give you a few tips that have helped me tremendously over the years to produce and distribute personal, positive energy in a negative world. My persona on TV is almost always happy and fun-loving and freewheeling. And that's not an act. It's honestly how I feel a lot of the time, but it's certainly not how I feel all the time. And as proof, I brought my wife, Rose, who will be glad to tell you. Since I was a teen, I've struggled with periods of feeling very down. In the old days, we called it melancholy, just sort of a dark grayness, anxiety, concern for the future, feeling overwhelmed, underqualified, wondering how I'm going to make it through the next day. And at one point, many years ago, I was diagnosed as being clinically depressed. The truth is, I was suicidal for a period of time, 2 different periods in my young life. I saw no reason to go on living another day, but I kept telling myself, just one more day, just hold on until tomorrow, and somehow I did. Suicide's always been a big issue in our society, and since the pandemic began, the numbers have skyrocketed. Young, old, rich, poor, it's a horrible plague. And I want to take just a moment to speak personally to any of you, yes, you, because it also happens to successful people like we have in the room today. And I just spilled my water, which my wife Rose will tell you I do at least once a day at the dinner table. But I want to speak to anybody here today who might be struggling with feelings of depression, usefulness, hating yourself, despising your life. Please, hang on for one more day. I'm so incredibly glad that I did. And I'm confident you will be too, because had I not continued with my life at that point, I would have missed out on all the amazing and wonderful things that have happened to me over the last 40, 45 years. I am convinced that you, no matter who you are, have a future and a hope that is above and beyond what you can imagine today. And we have some young people coming out in just a little bit who are going to follow up my presentation with a few questions. And this goes from them to those of you in the room who may be struggling or wondering if it's worth it, if it's worth going on. Talk to somebody, a teacher, a close friend, a pastor who will listen, and don't be too prideful to reach out for some sort of professional help or counseling. Even if it doesn't seem like it today, the world needs you in our future tomorrow. I'd be glad to chat with you myself, and you can reach me through my Facebook page, Steve Stucker, New Mexico Weatherman, or email me at this station. I don't have all the answers, but I'm familiar with many resources, and I know personally a lot of kind and caring people who will listen and have professional skills that will help. Now, some of you know that along with being a forecaster, I'm also a pastor, and I know that may be the weirdest job combination in the whole world, pastor, forecaster. You know, one of them you can lie a little bit now and then. The other, you're supposed to speak the truth in love. And as my television career winds down, my plan is to do ministry full-time through my retirement years. And don't worry, I'm not going to preach to you this afternoon, but I'm also not embarrassed to tell you that coming to a close personal relationship with Jesus and asking him to be my Lord and Savior over 30 years ago was a turning point in a life that had seemed useless and hopeless up to that point. And as long as I still have the freedom to express my faith in public, I hope to have the courage to do so at every opportunity. You know, in much of the world, it's outlawed and it'll get you thrown in prison or killed. So thank you for understanding my desire to express my beliefs while I still can. Now, I also recognize that you too have the freedom to express your faith, different as it may be, or even to express your lack of faith. That's fine. It's time for us to learn through our faith, through our politics, through our day-to-day actions, to talk with each other about these things without getting all fired up or calling names. As an example, just because you may not agree on why climate change is happening, or even if it truly is, it doesn't give you the right to call somebody a climate denier. On the other hand, a tree hugger is not the kindest term we could use. There's a lot of terms these days that get tossed around like rice at an old-fashioned wedding. And I do suggest that we go back to reading George Orwell's book, 1984. A lot of us were assigned that in the dark ages in high school. because I believe we're seeing this exact scenario unfold right in front of us, carefully planning uses of words and phrases to shut people off, to shut them out, to shut them up. Mr. Orwell may have been off by several decades, but his general idea was right on the money. And I say, let's just go back to having good old-fashioned conversations so we can work together to find some common ground. Most of us want so many of the same things. We want peace in our lives, our families to be safe, our children to have a bright future, to find a way to contribute to this world becoming a better place for our grandchildren. I absolutely love this earth, the mountains, the oceans, the farms and ranches, the rivers, our wildlife, and incredible natural beauty. I've been blessed for many, many years to be able to judge a contest of wildlife photographed on or around oil rigs. And the producers send those in, and the organization hands out cash prizes for them. And it's really wonderful. I love to see that those two things, wildlife and the oil and gas industry, can live and work together in harmony. I want these things to be here for my kids and my grandkids and my great-grandkids long after I'm gone. And I'm sure that all of you agree with that. But it's not going to happen if we continue to refuse to speak with anyone who believes differently, religiously, politically, financially, racially, socially. I still don't have everything figured out. Rose and I can't agree on where to have dinner half the time, let alone the really serious subjects. And there are times when I still struggle, but I'm so blessed and so excited about the days that I have left in this world that I want to wrap up by telling you a few simple things that I've learned along the way that have helped me tremendously to, on a regular basis, do my best to produce positive energy in a negative world. First one is my favorite. Life is short, so eat dessert first. I see some of you still have the cheesecake on your table, and that's horrible. Haven't eaten yet today for lunch, but last night, Mayor Janway can tell you that my huge piece of chocolate cake was gone before the dinner was served, and Rose was so embarrassed. Can't take you anywhere, but that's what I believe. Yes, we have to watch our weight. We have to be careful about eating right and getting exercise. But please don't be afraid to have some fun now and then. Whenever I sit down, I always make a point at a banquet to eat dessert first, because I would hate to think that halfway through the banquet, I would have the big one, and there'd be a beautiful piece of cheesecake left there on the table for somebody else to eat. And what I'm really saying is look for little excuses, special reasons to celebrate. Birthdays and anniversaries are great, but that's not enough. Maybe it's remembrance of the day you got the job. Maybe it's the day you quit the job. Maybe it's those silly daily salutes like National Grouch Day or I found my keys. Let's have some cheesecake. Celebrate for someone else. Watch for special designations, salutes, celebrations for people you know. They have them for nurses and teachers and school bus drivers and neighbors, grandparents, best friends. I just was thinking about this as I was finishing up my notes last night. When I get back, I'm going to do in my daily salute, I'm going to do one for Oil Field Workers Week. And I tell you what, we've got a lot of heroes that get out there and grind away every single day. Make an excuse, use any reason to celebrate in a fun way. Number 2, life is dangerous. Live it anyway. The one prediction I can be certain of is that there's a 100% chance that every one of us will die. I might not get any closer than a 50% chance of rain, but I promise everybody in this room is going to be gone someday. And I don't say that to make you nervous or afraid, but to release you, to help you to recognize that today is special. It's a gift, and I need to get out there and really enjoy those special little things. You know, our world has become so afraid of everything. Rose and I crack up at the warnings on the medical commercials and the billboards and the things like that we see on the evening news. But people are just, overboard. We recently were blessed with a trip to Hawaii, and I posted a pic of a beautiful palm tree, me sitting underneath it, and there was a couple of coconuts on it. And somebody posted, "Be careful of those coconuts, they could fall down and kill a guy." And I'm like, great. Something else to worry about. But how about just taking a few moments to enjoy the picture or the sunsets or to marvel at your kids or your grandkids or your pets? And how about taking a little time every day to help someone else enjoy their life? That's what this trip on earth is really all about, especially someone who may be feeling down or facing a tough time. It could be dropping in to visit an elderly person who lives alone, or going out of your way to help one of your children's friends who's being raised by a single grandparent, or sneaking over to pull the weeds in your neighbor's driveway without being detected. Maybe it's just spending a little money on someone who would never expect it, especially if you can do it in secret. We have so many things: cancer, heart disease, auto accidents, COVID, a giant asteroid. Just good old-fashioned old age is going to get some of us, and all of us will be gotten eventually. So the trick is to get out there and live today. And every day that we spend living in fear is a day that we might as well be dead anyway. And I like to ask, if you knew today was your last day, what would you do and say? Are there people you haven't thanked? Are there those that you need to make things right with? Are there apologies that you've been putting off for years and years? As a pastor, I can't tell you how many times I sit in rooms with people that are grief-stricken because they waited too long and didn't get the chance to do those things. There will always be plagues and diseases. We could walk out the door and get hit by a bus or a coconut. And every time I throw my leg over the top of my Harley to go ride, I thank the Lord for the joy that machine has brought me. And I tell him, if this is my last ride, it sure has been a blast. Number 3 is what I call fake it until you make it. I don't like phonies, and I never want to be one, so it may sound strange to say this, but it works. There's a lot of scientific evidence that we're able to influence, even change the way we feel. There are a good number of mornings when my alarm goes off at 2:20 a.m. that I am dead tired. And it's worse when I have situations or people I'm worried about. It can drag you down, make you want to go back to bed and cover up your head. We all know that one, right? So I've learned to temporarily pretend or imagine I'm feeling good. I put on some positive, encouraging music. I turn it up and I sing along. I search my memory banks to help me remember some of the good things, some of the great people that bring me joy and happiness. And then I focus on doing just 1 or 2 things towards something I'm looking toward in the future. And before I know it, I actually start to feel it, and I no longer have to fake it. The late, great Will Rogers once said, truth is, most people are about as happy as they decide to be. So decide to be happy. Get out there and enjoy your life. Work on developing what I call an attitude of gratitude. Even on our worst days, most of us still have an awful lot to be thankful for. I've put into my daily schedule what I call trigger points along the way that remind me. It starts at each morning, 2:30, when I hop in the shower. That hot water makes me feel so incredibly good and reminds me that so many people, even in our country, don't have that. Around the world, there are tens of millions that don't even have clean drinking water. And it reminds me to thank God for all the good things in my life, my wife and my children, my grandchildren, my home, my bed, dependable, affordable transportation with a tank full of gas, and the freedom I still have as an American. And it helps me set the tone for the rest of my day before I'm even out the door and on my way. Now, that doesn't keep bad things from happening to me. Hard times are part of life for every single one of us, but if we can train our brain to think of difficulties as a sharpening process to make us better able to function and to make us stronger, then we can very often use those hard times to energize our personal growth. Nobody gets by unhurt in this life. Unfair, unexpected things happen to everyone. And the question has to be, do we allow them to make us bitter or use them to make us better? I posted on my Facebook page last week about how frustrated I was that my favorite taco place was closed on Taco Tuesday. Isn't that illegal? In the second place, I drove up to the window and ordered 2 tacos. That'll be 30 minutes, sir. I said, for tacos? Are you kidding me? And I was frustrated, but I didn't allow it to get to me. I'll never forget a young man from 10 or 15 years ago who would check me in at the car wash on a regular basis. And one day he said, forgive me if this is out of line, Mr. Stucker, but you always seem so happy and positive when I see you on the air, but you sure don't act like that when you come in here. And I was so guilty, and I owe this young man a big debt. I was frustrated at the high price of a car wash, and here I was taking it out with my sourpuss attitude on the poor guy making minimum wage who was just told to go out there and do his job. So I try my best to never let it happen again. Rose is much, much better at it than I am, and she inspires me. It's frustrating around the country. We don't have enough workers to keep our restaurants open, that it takes 2 or 3 months to get in to see a doctor because New Mexico doesn't have enough of them. But it makes absolutely no sense for us to take our frustrations out on the ones who do show up, on the ones who have to explain it'll be 90 days until we can get you an appointment. As a matter of fact, they deserve our praise and our thanks, and they deserve a double dose of our ongoing attitude of gratitude. I'd like to get you started on this, kind of like pump start this. It's probably already mentioned when I was in the other room meeting some folks, but let's start with a great big thanks for the delicious steaks from Lynn and Kim Ballard, and for those who served us today, Sheriff Cage and the Eddy County Sheriff's Department, who cooked it all up. And one thing I've learned over the years is that when you're truly grateful, it's so much harder to be hateful. Yes, those people on the other side of the political aisle, or those who believe differently than we do, can really get to us. But if we can train our brain to be completely thankful for the situation I'm in this very day, knowing that it all has a purpose, then most, if not all of that anger just gets pushed out of the way. And I apologize, I'm running a little over on time, but I have to get this in. Be alert and be available. About 10 years ago, I was surprised to get a private message on Facebook from a woman I'd never met. She explained her 12-year-old niece had spina bifida so badly she couldn't get up into a regular bed, and she'd been sleeping on the couch. And she said she's such a sweet girl, but it's literally killing her to sleep on the couch. Can you get her a hospital bed? And being the nice, kind, generous Christian man that I am, a hospital bed? Well, no, who do you think I am, lady? And I got up and just walked away, so frustrated that a total stranger would ask me for something so weird out of the blue. And it was an hour or two later, and I imagine back now that God tapped me on the shoulder and said, you could ask, that old ask and you shall receive thing. And I went back to my Facebook audience and I said, I know this sounds weird, but there's a little girl who needs a hospital bed. Does anybody know where I might find one or anything about it? Within 30 minutes, a friend of mine messaged me and said, my mom has one. My dad was in it the last 5 years of his life before he died, and it has a lot of sentimental value to her. I've been bugging her to get rid of it, but she won't, she can't. But she saw that the little girl needs it, and if you want it, it's yours. So I was so excited, and I went back to that note, which I hadn't even finished reading before because I'd been so frustrated, and I read the small print, and she said, thank you for considering this. We live in Shiprock. And I'm like, oh, great, now I got a hospital bed, and I got to drive clear to the far corners of the Navajo Nation here. But I was quick. I got back online. I got the hospital bed. Can somebody help? Medical equipment salesman and a friend jumped in, took it up. They took pictures. Dakota and her mom, it was just the sweetest thing. I still have the picture to this day. And to this day, about 10, 12 years later, it has spawned an organization that Rose and I lead called Beds for Kids. We give free beds to needy families. We all know about the poverty in New Mexico. It's especially bad in Albuquerque and parts of northern New Mexico. To date, because of the kindness of this woman, Mrs. Ortiz, whose funeral I conducted about 3 weeks ago, we've placed over 15,000 people in clean, comfortable beds free of charge. And it cracks me up. I can't take any of the credit. I had a bad attitude to start with. But I made myself finally alert and available, and we've seen that again and again. So I would ask you, before you leave today, to begin asking yourself every day, what will be my legacy? Is it going to be my name on a building? Or will it be my imprint on a life or many lives? Last night, I love that we handed out the Spirit of the Oil Field Awards. And I learned that a lot of these guys that are out there grinding it all day long go and coach for the high school football team and as an assistant afterwards. Or they work with the drug and the rehab program free of charge to counsel people to rebuild their lives. And that's what it's all about. Finally, NEGU. Never, ever give up. Keep working, keep trying. I'm told Thomas Edison failed in 20,000 different experiments before he hit on the one that produced the electric light bulb. Had he quit at 19,999, we'd all be eating in the dark here this afternoon. Recognize that you have the ability, the personal power to produce positive energy in a negative world every minute of every single day. And I promise everyone you come into contact with will get a huge charge out of it. Now go out of your way to make it a great day. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time. I want to call up all the high school students. Y'all come on out and take your seats here. While they're coming out, I wanted to show you my law enforcement jacket here. And I just snagged the new Carlsbad Police Department patch. I'll find room for it on here. I've got Eddy County Sheriff on here anyway, but Rose will tell you I hang this in the back window when we're traveling through New Mexico. It's my get out of jail free code. But I will proudly wear this patch in the days to come. Now, the students are, for the most part, very, very interested in science, something I'm certainly not expert at. I'm going to take this, and did you all decide we're going to start over here? Okay, they're going to ask questions and stump the speaker, and I'll do my best to answer. Go ahead, tell me your name if you would, and then ask your question.
Okay, my name is Jaylee Metters, and I was wondering how much data you have to look at and put together in order to present your results.
That'll depend on the day. Sometimes it's so easy and it's so static. You know, you'll get 6 days in the summertime, sunny, 119 degrees in Carlsbad, no change in sight. It depends. There's some times when I really don't have to look at very much. Other times when I can be very overloaded with all the information and all the data. If there's a threat of flooding or severe storms or things like that, it takes more time. And as I mentioned, the data that I look at is available to any of you. There's websites that are publicly available. It just depends on your ability to explain it and decipher it. Typically, I'll look through a couple of pages of information that my colleagues at the National Weather Service put out the night before I go to bed, and then get up in the morning and double check it to make sure nothing has happened. But on average, you know, probably about 30 minutes a day, sometimes more, sometimes less. But I've done this for a long enough time that there's a lot of cases where I can recognize, it's this scenario or that scenario, and I don't have to be quite as intense with it. Other times, we really have to pay attention because things are always changing and there's always the potential for something new. And whether, while we laugh about it and joke about it, it can be serious. I mean, the people that are working outside, the farmers, the ranchers, those of you that are involved with sporting events or anything like that, it can be deadly important. And so we really try to do our best to pay attention to that.
My name is Miley Mabry. I was wondering if the development of weekly forecasts are difficult or time-consuming.
The extended forecast? Yeah, if development of the extended forecast is time-consuming. Yes, it can be. and I like it. That's one of the reasons why I laugh at the 50 and 100 year forecast. It's like, hey, get the 7-day just right once, and then I'll talk to you about what's going to happen 50 years down the road. But again, they're getting better and better. The science is better, the technology is better, and as a translator, what I try to do is make it fairly easy to remember. So if we're having a big cold front coming into southeastern New Mexico, and the temperatures are going to change from 100 degrees to 67 degrees the next day, and you all know that happens. I tease y'all about being on a roller coaster or yo-yos out here because of the way the temperatures go up and down. But I try to round it off as much as I can. If it's 7 days out in advance, I don't feel that it's critically important to you if the number on the coolest day is 68 or 70. I'm probably going to round it off so I can say, and we're going from 110 today to only 70 here at the end of the 7-day forecast. We do a number of those in each of our forecasts. We do 4 communities where we do 7 days because New Mexico is geographically the 5th largest state. It's very rare for a television station to cover as many communities as we do, but we do four of them around the state to try and keep up on it. So it's a major component of me preparing my forecast each day.
My name is Sean Frohijare, and I would like to ask, what made you become interested in the field of meteorology?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was an accident. You may look and go, boy, what a really bad accident, Steve. I was always interested in being in broadcasting, and I started off as a long-haired rock and roll disc jockey, and I was doing that and perfectly happy when a friend of mine who worked for me called me. He had been my newsreader in the afternoons at the Top 40 station I managed, and he called and said he'd gotten a job at the CBS affiliate as a reporter, and he called and said, they have an opening for the weekend weather guy. They like the way you sound on the air, and they want you to come and audition for the job. And I said, oh, Brian, thanks, but I know nothing about it. He's like, it's easy. I can show you what to do. I said, I don't have a suit or a tie. I don't want to cut my hair. He said, well, they know you're my friend, and I kind of already told them that you would come down. So please just humor me. So, combed the mop back and borrowed a jacket, had somebody show me how to tie a tie. And I went down and I auditioned, and there were, me and 2 other people, and luckily the other 2 weren't very serious about it, and I got the job. So it's kind of a weird start. Then I did weather and radio there together in Amarillo, Texas for about a year, and then I came out to New Mexico and did radio only, and became interested in doing some forecasting things again, when again a friend told me he had a job at Channel 4 as the occasional fill-in person, and he hated it, and he was going to quit. He told me, and I went down and auditioned for it, and after a little bit of begging and prodding, eventually I got the job. They'd call me once every 6 weeks in the middle of the night to come and fill in, and I eventually worked my way into doing that. And I've come to love it. It was really good timing for me because I was at a point in my radio career where I just wasn't happy. I wasn't being fulfilled as I had been. And this has allowed me, we have a lot of serious weather here, but we go through long stretches when it's just fun, when it's just enjoyable. The climate, generally speaking, in New Mexico is so beautiful, and that gives me some places, some spaces where I can fill my love of entertaining and just being fun and being positive and talking about the cool things that are going on in the different communities, the fundraisers, the great groups, the volunteers, the organizations. And I really have become passionate about the forecasting along the way, and it'll be 33 years this spring since I started.
My name is Alice Albana, and my question was, what was the craziest weather forecast you've ever had to cover?
Oh my gosh, I should have studied for this one. I'm not really sure, the floods that we had here, what was it, like 2015, 2017, something in that period, horrible time frame. And I can't pick out one. I have to say it's kind of like my children. I love them all the same. But, you know, we get people stranded on the interstate in snowstorms. My son, when he was playing high school baseball, was coming back from an event. I think they played a tournament with Hobbs and Carlsbad, and coming back in a snowstorm, the front windshield in their bus blew out. And they spent 3 days in a luxury hotel in Vaughan. 40 high school kids in their stinky underwear for 4 days with no change of clothes. So there's all kinds of fun things, but I would say as opposed to one particular storm, what I love is when people will come up and remind me of something. If it was a terrible weather event or something that had happened to them, and they'll talk about how it affected them. I will say that this past year, the forest fires in Ruidoso and up in the northern part of New Mexico have left an imprint on us. And Rose and I, we love to go to Ruidoso. And so we just felt personally violated by that. I'm friends with a gentleman who runs a Christmas tree ranch up in the northern mountains, and he has been through the closest thing to Armageddon that I could ever imagine. So that's the most recent, because it was the fires followed by the torrential rainfall, which caused horrible flooding and very dangerous conditions. Best I can do on that one. Thank you.
My name is Madison Edmondson, and my question is, have you ever made a forecast that turned out to be incorrect?
What time is it here? Yeah. You know, and it's payback. I call it my payback from way back, because when I was in radio, I made fun of the weather guys so much. Oh my gosh, I just tortured them. And now it's my turn. But and we are wrong. But you know, one of the things I'd like to do someday is teach a little community college class on how to listen to a weather forecast, because you all don't listen worth a darn sometimes. You're like a bunch of kids. You hear what you want to hear. You said it was going to rain. No, I didn't. I said there was a 10% chance it might rain, but you were hoping it would. Yeah, we're wrong, but in watching it closely, I take a lot of pride in trying to be pretty close. And I check daily. When I come in the morning, I'll check 4 or 5 key cities to see what their high was the day before, just to see if I'm on track with what we're predicting. And I say we because I get the info from the brainiacs at the National Weather Service, but I have the freedom to alter those numbers, to bump them up or to move them down, whether it's the temperature or the percentage of the possibility of precipitation, whatever it is. So yeah, we're wrong, but I'm confident in saying that through technology and better science, that they're much, much better at it. Albuquerque has many different micro-listening. And you know, we have such varied landscape. Albuquerque has many different microclimates. We have so many different elevations. Driving down here, you know, Rose and I could see several different places that I talk about all the time, and recognize when you see it in person to know better about it. But yeah, we miss it now and then, and I usually just want to own up to it and just say, man, we missed it big time yesterday, and then try to explain why. A lot of times it can be things as simple as the timing of a cold front. We might predict that it's going to go from 90 to 70 in Carlsbad between yesterday and today, but it turns out we only got down to 80. And we'll look, and it's because, well, the cold front, our prediction was a little too early, and we're going to hit 70 tomorrow. So a lot of times it's just, you know, man trying to understand nature. With those of you in the oil field and industry, work with every single day and doing our best to deal with it.
My name is Sophia Quarter, and I wanted to ask if you can adjust the speed of the monitor that you read off of.
Okay.
And what do you do if it's going too fast and you miss
Yeah,
a few
she's
words?
referring to the teleprompter. And can we adjust that? Yes, they can. They have a variety of those. Sometimes the person reading the news can control it themselves. Typically, there's somebody sitting across the room watching the script on the computer and rolling it for them, and they can, you know, hand signal, speed up or slow down. On the weather, I don't follow a script. I'm unable to, because we're sort of the accordion of the newscast. We expand or contract depending on what's going on. Maybe they give us 3 minutes for a segment, but there's breaking news. Or maybe a tape they had that was going to take 2 minutes the machine blows up and we have to fill that 2 minutes. So I can't write a script. I do a short script, put it on the computer for our closed captioning for our hard of hearing folks, like myself, or people that just want to read it with the sound down. But I can't read it. But they can adjust the speed for those who do it. And for those of us that do forecasts, no matter who it is, I don't know anybody, unless it's a brand new beginner, that writes out the forecast. We have the facts in our head and memorize it enough. And then I use the little symbols on the map, the high pressure, the low pressure, the blue lines indicating the cold fronts, the icons for rain or sunshine or wind to remind me, oh yeah, it's gonna be winds gusting 50 to 60 miles an hour in Carlsbad on Sunday. And it is. You all have been warned. No, I don't think it's gonna be quite that bad, but Sunday could be windy. Let's thank our students for taking the time to come up. Thank you all for your patience with me this afternoon. I love this event, and I'm so glad to get to meet so many of you. You, to me, are the heart and soul, not just of New Mexico, but of what this country is all about, and I encourage you to, as I said, never give up. Keep it going. You've got so many people around so much of the world depending on what you do, and the future is ours if we don't quit. Take some time to really enjoy your life today, and may God bless. Thank you.
Steve Stucker, what a great job. Thank you, kids. Thank you.